appreciate your attendance tonight. We're not used to seeing such a crowd. I'll call the meeting to order, and the first item on our agenda is approval of minutes from the January meeting and the April meeting. Are there any comments or additions to be made? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Make a motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? So moved. Our only item of business tonight is a conditional zoning request from the town, 2024-01. Review and consideration of conditional rezoning request to increase a pole height of the public communications pole at Green Hill Water Tank. And I'd like to recognize Kevin to give us a staff report.
Be glad to. As you know, the town is requesting this conditional rezoning of town property, which is currently zoned R15, single family, to conditional zoning R15. And with the purpose to erect an 80-foot utility pole for the town public communications. The 7.71 acre property is located at the town water tank on Green Hill Circle. And seeking this rezoning to install an 80-foot utility pole to be used as mounting structure for the town's public communications for Blowing Rock Fire Department, Blowing Rock Police, and Public Works. The radio antennas for these departments and agencies are currently mounted on 2 wooden utility poles at the Green Hill water tank property. The tallest existing pole with the primary antennas is approximately 57 feet above grade. The land use code states that the erection of any non-commercial utility pole or tower greater than 20 feet in height requires a special use permit, or the property can be rezoned to allow for that public utility pole. And in this case, the town has chosen to pursue conditional rezoning for broader public input, and that's the process that was presented to you tonight. There are conditions attached typically to a conditional zoning, and the town has 5 conditions. The new utility pole will be no taller than 80 feet above grade. The communication antennas may extend above the top of this pole, but not to exceed 10 feet above the top of the pole. Number 3, no commercial telecommunications provider antennas will be located on the proposed utility pole. No healthy trees will be removed from the property unless those trees could potentially damage the proposed utility pole, existing buildings, or the water tank. And number 5, any gaps in the existing vegetative opaque buffer that's currently on site would be supplemented to a height of at least 10 feet above grade. And that would include the entire property. There is a great percentage of vegetated buffer around it, but there are some places where there's not. And so the town is proposing that we would fill those areas in to screen the entire part of that property. Your packet, you had several documents, the letter from Town Manager Shane Fox, the application for conditional rezoning, the draft ordinance, Exhibit B, which lists those conditions I just mentioned to you. Exhibit A, it will ultimately be Exhibit A to that draft ordinance, which is the aerial site plan that shows the water tank, the new communications building that was installed back a few months back, and then the proposed location of the pole. Also on that aerial site plan was little notations of the distance from the structural surrounding properties from the pole, or from the pole location, the distance of, we would call it maybe a fall zone, but that distance from each structure around that location. Survey of the site, an old survey, and then you'll see before and after photo simulation of the proposed pole, and then a photo of the actual type of pole in a stockyard. Is it just a galvanized steel pole? And that would be an example of what we're going to be using. My staff report's pretty brief. I don't know if you have any questions for me, but at this time, I would just maybe wait until Shane's going to do a presentation to give you more information, and at that time, maybe ask questions. So,
Shane?
I'll start briefly here at the podium and make my way over here if it's okay. Be able to see the screen here behind me, but be happy to answer any questions throughout the presentation. Be happy to wait till the end. I do have a few slides here, several slides I might add, that hopefully sheds a light on some of the history of the site and the reasoning for it. So if you will, I'm going to slide myself over here so I can see the screen. The room setup is not the best, especially when you're presenting something. We'll outline what we're doing tonight. So I've titled Why Are We Here is kind of the first section, a little background on the Green Hill site, some maps, overviews, and picks. An overview of the town of Lone Rock Communications and what's up there currently and what we utilize, which is our VHF technology. Why the need and what has changed for this? Why are we here tonight requesting this conditional zoning? And then ending with what this isn't. I think it's important to dispel some things. And then in closing, I do have a few more comments if I might. So this is an outline of what I put together as a presentation. We'd like to kind of start here with why are we here? As Kevin mentioned a few minutes ago, it's for you to consider recommending to the town council conditional zoning or rezoning for the town-owned property, otherwise known as Green Hill Water, to erect an 80-foot utility pole. That's why we're here. The pole would replace a current 57-foot pole that's there now, that's on site, and it's currently being used for internal communication purposes. That's all that's being used for, and that's our intent tonight, just why, as Kevin mentioned earlier, why we put the stipulations and conditions in there. This is only to be used going forward for internal communication purposes. In our case, for fire, police, and public works, our essential services, and for our protection of our citizens and stakeholders. No outside agencies, no cellular companies, zero changes to the current system. We're not asking to change anything about the current system, anything about the technology that's up there other than upgrading the repeaters, upgrading the technology within the building. Same system that we've been utilizing, same system we've utilized for quite a few decades. And I'll talk about that in just a few moments. But essentially what we're asking for here is to be allowed to raise the height of the pole that's currently there. I'll go into more detail why we're asking that throughout this presentation. So why conditional zoning? Kevin touched on that. In typical fashion, we may be looking at a special use permit. However, we at the town feel like this topic and the fact that we have a full room here, obviously I think verifies that, is a topic in which we need public input, or allow public input, to be open, transparent, have dialogue with the public. It's also complicated, right? So this is something unique. It's unique for the town to be the applicant at the same time as potentially being the judge and the jury. That's unique from a town council's perspective. So as we looked at this, we felt like our options in a positive way would go through conditional rezoning of the property to allow for the height of the pole to be extended, to allow for a more public process, not to limit to just the neighbors, not to limit to just those that potentially had impacts there, and not to limit our town council, our staff, and others into a box, into a corner that we didn't feel like was fair to everyone involved. That's the reason why we went with conditional zoning, is to be more transparent, to be more open, to share, and to be able to answer questions of the planning board, of the town council, and of the public. A little background and history of the Green Hill sites. I think it's important for those that may not know, and you may know this and you may not know. The town has owned the property at Green Hill and utilized it for communication purposes and water purposes for over 50 years. On the water side, beyond 50 years. Current tank that's up there is a 3 million gallon water tank. If you've not been up there, I suggest you go. It's a large structure. It's 6 times larger than the one that we most recently painted on the side of 321. 6 times larger than that. It's a massive specimen of concrete that's up there. We've also utilized that same site for around 5 decades for communication purposes. Unfortunately, the town, in the process of looking to upgrade several years back, was going to partner with the state and the fiber tower. That was never pursued any further than what was happening at that time. It was dropped. And so we still have the same technology up there that we've had for the better part of 5 decades, which is VHF technology. I'll go into a little more detail in a few moments about what that technology is. It's not a lot, to be honest with you. It's ham radio, two-way radio technology. But we've utilized that site for that purpose, just like we have for the water purpose, for over 5 decades. This location, why this location? Well, simply the same reason that a lot of folks in this room have moved to that location, the height. It's the highest point in town. It's got the best views, but it's got the highest point that we can utilize for our water system, number one, which is a gravity system. Water goes from the water tank up to the tank on Green Hill, and it all flows by gravity downhill. We don't have any other pumps within the system. We've got PRVs that stop along the way, but we get it to the highest point, we let the water flow. Communications work very similar to that. You get the highest point that you can get, you get an antenna on top of it. It's point to point, A to A or A to D type of technology. And I'll show you a few things in a few moments on what that looks like. So here's a survey of the site. This was most recently done by Gill Associates. This supersedes what Kevin showed a few minutes ago. No changes to it. You can kind of see here if that works. Concrete water tank in the middle there, the large circle. There we go. There's the large circle. Here is Green Hill Circle that goes around it. Properties around it. We have an old building that's here that you'll see in the pictures in a few moments. We placed a new building here, which is going to house our new system, our new repeaters, our new technology that we've purchased up there. Our current pole is right here and right here, so we do have two poles up there right now. We have one shorter and one taller. The shorter one houses our water meter system and some of our communications for our water system that's on that. Our taller one has the antenna that is our two-way radio system. We're proposing in this area of placing the new poles, and that was shown in the overview that Kevin had a few moments ago, and it's shown right here. That's where we're showing this dot of putting the pole there as our proposed 80-foot utility pole, right beside of the new building that's placed up there right now. Again, if you haven't been up there, I suggest you take a look. Kevin pointed out a few moments ago some of the distances around the area, with the closest being Mr. and Mrs. Oswell at 107 feet. Again, this is an 80-foot pole for reference. Here's a picture of the current layout, the two poles on the left and on the right, and our new building. Old building there's on the left. It is falling down. So you can see the need for the new building to be placed there. Here's another view from behind that shows the two poles. The one in the far back is the taller one of the two. This one is what's housing our two-way radios. That's the antenna. That's the whip, as I'll refer to it tonight. That's about 7 feet above. It's about 10-foot whip. It's about 7 feet above the top of that pole right now. So 57-foot pole, about 64 feet, give or take, to the top of where we are currently. Our town communication system is VHF technology. Some of you may know this. I'll go into a little more detail because I think it may be important. We utilize that for internal communication purposes for our peers and our dispatch. So that is for our fire and our police and public works. That is their lifeline. That is when they push their walkie-talkie, and the chief is here, Sergeant Hunt is here as well. They've got the radios on. That is what you see when they push their radios with their shoulder straps. That is going to their peers, or that is going up and going to dispatch. How does that happen? Very simple. I'll show you the graphic in a few moments. That signal goes up, it hits the top of that antenna, it goes down, it hits a repeater, it repeats the signal, and sends it back up. And that's how communication is traveling back and forth. It's a point A to point B. It's a line of sight type of system that we have. So we've utilized this technology, and we've utilized this site, again, for approximately 50 years for the exact same purpose. VHF, very high frequency. Some have talked about, are we changing the technology that's up there? We aren't. This particular type of use serves us well here in Dallas. It can serve a large area, especially the higher up you can go. It can kind of canvas a large area. It does have the ability to transmit through, to an extent, some canopies and trees like we have here, but it does weaken the signal. We'll talk about that. As you go up to UHF or cell phone technology, that's limited within this area. We know that. We have cell phones. I thought it was important to share the frequencies. So the RF technology, radio frequency technology that's utilized for VHF for blowing rock would be considered between 150 and 160 megahertz. If you look at what UHF, which is ultra high frequency, or even your cell phones, you're talking 900 plus megahertz. Fast difference there when you're talking the signal that's being sent out, the frequency that's being sent out. This is low frequency technology. Again, almost handheld, ham radio technology is the best way to put that. Our communication system utilizes this line of sight, VHF technology, that can be hindered by hills and mountains and blocked by buildings and that sort. If the signal is not strong enough, the signal doesn't follow through the contours of the earth. It is truly point A to point B. The higher the antenna, the higher of that signal point, the better you can receive and remit signals, and the more effective the communication is. Here's a graphic that I wanted to show you all that I think kind of puts home what is out there and why we utilize this type of technology and why we utilized Green Hill all those decades ago for this exact same purpose. Our radio repeater, just like what's there, that's a tower. We don't use that term tonight because we're talking about a pole and a monopole. But you see there a tower, so to speak, and you see that's essentially how this system works. It is a point A to point B. It's a line of sight. It is going from the tallest point to the recipient or the receiver or the sender of that message. You could also add into here our dispatch, our police dispatch that you see over here sitting in our police department 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, has an antenna on top of their building, and it's signaling back and forth from this antenna to their antenna and down to the actual handhelds or to the chest radios that they have. So the technology is low tech. It is not great technology. Again, we're talking 150, 160 megahertz. Cell phones are 900, give or take. Again, I think that's important. So this is low technology, but it's what we have. It's what we've utilized successfully over the last 4 or 5 decades. So why are we here? What's the need? What's changed? Our system has been in a slow decline from signal strength for a number of years. We can tell that when we have things like leaves on the trees, as simple as that is, it changes our technology. It slows down our ability. Our signals get weaker or they go non-extent. Those leaves leave. Our folks can tell you that they have better signal. They have better frequency that can get them in different places. We know, and we can put up here in just a few moments, why that is because we have a great amount of trees in this area, which we want to have and we want to keep. No exception to that is that we also have a great deal of canopy around the tank itself. We also know, and we've identified, and what started this process was well over a year and a half ago, we identified the need to upgrade not only the potential of the antenna and the pole, but really our repeaters as well. So we've already invested money, not only in the building that's up there, that's in place, but also in purchasing new repeaters that are going to be utilized. We haven't installed those yet, they're on their way, we've ordered them, but that's also going to help hopefully boost our signal. That being said, we know that our canopy, especially around the tank, where we're sending that signal, has continued to grow. And that's been purposefully. The town has purposefully allowed that canopy to grow up. One of the stipulations that we put in, or the conditions we put in, is that we'd like to even help some of the bare spots. As we walked the site and we looked at the site, we realized we could do a better job. Our job as being good neighbors to the town and having that 3 million gallon water tank there is for us to be able to hide it or camouflage it as much as we can. Because we've allowed that canopy to grow to the extent that it has, we now have limitations. We have hindrance because of the heights of the trees. And I've got some pictures to show you in a few minutes along with some heights of what's up there. So by being good neighbors, which we continue to want to be, we've allowed that canopy to grow around this site and start to hinder some of the signals out there. We know that because we simply have testimony from individuals that have worked in public safety here for several decades. They can tell you that signal has gotten less and has gotten less over the period of that time. Trees, quite simply, this is not rocket science, filled full of water, trees have leaks, trees hinder signals. This technology is not complex. You can Google this, you can look at PH technology, it tells you quite literally what I'm telling you right now. Our option is how do we continue with the service that we have, the radio system we have, and improve the signal strength? Do we look at removing the canopy? Do we look at other sites? This is the tallest place in town. We've been here. We've been here before. A great number, if not most of the homes that were up there. This site is picked because of the ability for it to have a stronger signal and send out over the largest area of the town. We've asked to go up to an 80-foot section. That 80-foot section would give us 23 feet more than we have right now. It would go above the canopy that's up there. I've got some pictures here of some trees that I think are important to kind of point out. This is the pole that we're talking about. These trees, again, this pole's 57 feet. These trees are right around 50 to 55 feet of where they are. There's trees on the other side that are closer to 60 feet. We've put measurements around here. Simply, the canopy has grown to the point in which we now are hindering our signal coming out. As I showed earlier, that technology, again, low frequency, low technology, point A to point B. The clearer you can have from signal to signal, the stronger the signal can be. That's important when you're going into buildings, that's important when you're going inside of residences, whether that's fire, police, EMS, etc. So here's our ask once again. We're asking for consideration for us to move forward. If we're given that consideration and council ultimately approves it, we've been able to verbally procure a pole, through Rutherford EMC. It's a 100-foot galvanized pole. Blue Ridge Electric would, if we procure the pole, fabricate that and install it at a height no greater than 80 foot above grade. So Blue Ridge Electric does this type of installation every day. This is a utility pole. I'll go and flip over to the pole. This is what you've seen up and down the side of 321 or anywhere else you may have gone through some of our neighborhoods. This is an example of the exact pole with which we would procure. We would procure this pole if allowed and move forward with contracting with Blue Ridge Electric for them to install that pole at 80 foot above grade to the top of that pole, plus the width that would go on top of it. So we're asking for consideration, going to potential town council and asking for their ultimate approval to be able to move forward with that. I typically would not put something in here, but I think again, because of the nature of this topic, what this isn't, this is somewhat unfortunate, but I want to be able to dispel this from a town's perspective. This is for internal communication purposes only, just like it has been for the last 50 years. This is not for cell companies. It's not for external communications. We've had no communications with cell companies about this site to co-locate. We've had no communications or agreements in place with any cell companies to co-locate on this site. Conditional zoning, as you know, as planning board, doesn't allow for short-term rentals. It doesn't change the use of the property other than what you approve or council ultimately approves. In this situation, the approval, what's being asked, is for us to be able to rezone the property to allow us to go to and erect an 80-foot pole. That's what we're asking. It doesn't change anything else. It doesn't change the zoning of the properties around it. Has no changes there. There's been comments made, and we put distances in there. We've measured out distances. It doesn't have any fall hazards. It's not within the fall radius of the properties around there. The tank itself, much larger concern if I was a resident up there. There's 3 million gallons of water in there. There's a lot of concern on that may potentially result. We did show the distances. We did share the map with you what that looks like. It's also not applicable to what House Bill 310 says. So the town's interpretation, and our attorney is here present as well, of what House Bill says. 160D 937 is titled Access to City Utility Poles to Install Small Wireless Facilities, and is one of the states modified by state statutes modified by House Bill 310. It applies to city utility poles. The definition of that, as the General Statute defines it as a pole owned by the city in the city right of way that provides lighting, traffic control, or similar function. We believe it doesn't apply to us because we don't utilize it for those things. We utilize it only for internal communication purposes. We don't use it for public purposes outside of our public officers and individuals for internal communications. Co-location of small wireless facilities is mentioned in 160D 935. Requires administrative approval only for small wireless facilities located in the city right of way. This is not a city right of way. This is where this pole is going is not within the right of way. It also has a height limitation of the pole of 50 feet. I will make a note as I go through this and talk about the right of way and talk about the current system that's up there. There's 2 poles up there that we've never been contacted by about co-locating on that we would agree upon. That's not been the case. So this particular House bill and the changes that made in the statute simply apply to the town. And again, our council's here that can answer those questions if you have any questions for which House Bill 310. So, and we have a poll there now. So, in closing, I do have one person I'd like to bring up and allow him to speak. But the town of Blowing Rocks, the HF radios are our lifeline of our officers, our firefighters, our public works crews. We consider our radio communication as mission critical. Communication system is mission critical and operates and cannot continue without it, which ours is that. In a commercial world, business world, if operations stop, business is lost. In our world, it can mean something much more dire. We've experienced radio communication failure in this town, and it has resulted in death. And I'd like to bring up, if I could, Chief Nathan Kirk, to share with you just a simple story, if that's allowable.
I'm glad everybody came out tonight because clearly this is an important topic for y'all and it's important to me. Just like Mr. Fox said, we've had an incident in this town. Chief William Green, I'm sure most of y'all know about, he was working a case of B&Es, working late at night. He ended up coming upon 4 subjects coming out of a house. A small chase pursued. He chased them down here on 321 just south of the town. He called Watauga County let them know that he was in a pursuit, had the car stopped. It went unanswered. County didn't hear it. I don't know what happened there. To keep the story short, he was shot twice, stabbed multiple times. The subjects fled. He crawled back to his patrol car, called on the radio. It went unanswered. The radio transmission was picked up by Highway Patrol in Salisbury. Salisbury Highway Patrol called Watauga and had an officer around. Now, if he would have had communications working, who could say if they could have got there quicker, they could have saved his life. Now, what I found in my research, Officer Elmer Wood was going to relieve Chief Green that morning when he came in. And when he was interviewed, he said, in the place where he was, our radios sometimes don't work too well. Now, that was in 1963. And unfortunately, I've been here since 2019. And I've made that exact same comment to my officers because it deals with my safety, the officer's safety, and the safety of the community. And I have another short story that personally affected me. I was at Village Drive in the condos back behind Green Park. A man had a heart attack. I was the first officer on scene. CPR, I started CPR in progress. I was calling, I could hear the medics. I was getting transmissions in. I couldn't get out on my radio to let them know where I was. Luckily, I had another officer running code. He was on the other side of town. He came over, backed me up. I was able to instruct him to go outside onto the deck so he could get radio transmissions out to get them to my location because I couldn't get out. I was working on him. And every officer in my department could come up and tell you a similar story about how we have spots in this town that would say exactly like Officer Wood said, that our radios sometimes don't work well there. So I would just hate to see a situation like this again come up. So I just keeping it short. Thank you guys for your time.
So I would,
Thank you
Again.
for what you do.
thanks, sir. Again, follow up with the ask is my final slide. Our ask is for you all to consider recommending to the town council for this property to be conditionally zoned to allow for an 8-foot pole to be erected to replace the current 7-foot pole that is utilized only for internal communication purposes as the stipulation of conditions that we've placed within the ask for tonight for our town's police, fire, and public works. We believe, we've always believed, and we continue to believe that the town's first and most important obligation to the citizens and the stakeholders, whether that's a visitor that's been here one time or 100 times, you've lived here your entire life, is to provide emergency services to those that are in need when they need it. We have an obligation and we'll continue to uphold that obligation regardless. Technology that's there is there. It's been there for a long time. It's the technology in which we have. It's the site in which we've had. We've utilized that technology and that site for our purposes, this purpose, 50 years. Before the homes were there, before cutting up the rhododendrons to clear the ridge, before the individuals that moved into that area. We have an obligation to continue to do that. We felt like our obligation requires us to improve our technology. We've done that by utilizing the current new building. We're going to do that by installing new repeaters. And we need to do that by raising the current height of the pole to be able to get better coverage, better canopy than what we have currently there now. By being good neighbors, by allowing canopy to grow up and camouflage that tank that's up there. We've allowed for some of this to happen. We want to continue to be good neighbors and to continue to have that 3 million gallon tank that's 6 times larger than what's on 3 million to continue to be camouflaged. So therefore, we ask for your consideration tonight and recommendation, hopefully to town council, for them to consider ultimately whether they would like to approve or deny our ask with the recommendation. So with that, I'd like to say thank you for allowing me to present tonight. Thank you, Chief Kirk, for coming up and speaking. That concludes my presentation. I'd be glad to answer any questions you might have.
Have you considered alternative sites?
We have not considered alternative sites simply for the fact that this is the highest point in town. It provides us the best coverage. We also own this property. We do not own any other property that would be reasonable from a height perspective.
So you don't consider the 200-foot tower on Sampson Road to be a
It
possibility?
is not owned by the town.
Then does it have to be owned by the town?
The town's relationship with the entity that's at Sampson, which is the Viper radio system, which unfortunately we turned down, is not a relationship in which we currently still have.
And you can't recreate that?
The height of the Sampson Tower is also lower than this. It's not as high as this point. Could we recreate it? That's something that we've not considered. However, that consideration would not be, still would not provide us with the same level of protection, or same level of coverage as what this would, given the height and elevation of it.
So the tower out here on 321, as you're going to Boone, right there at J&M Produce, there's a communication tower up there. You can't put a tower up there that may be higher than 80 feet to reach the same,
Not get a flat top mountain, you wouldn't, from a signal standpoint.
I don't know, the flat top's in the way there, but I don't know. So there's no other alternative site. You're sitting on, how much property tax do you pay on that piece of property up there?
Property taxes?
Yeah.
The town doesn't pay property taxes.
Okay, good. I'm glad you said that because I wanted that on the record.
The town would never pay property taxes, for your record as well,
I got it. But you're
On
sitting
tax
on,
and
you're
getting-
sitting on a 3/4 acre piece of property.
with a 3 million gallon water tank, I might
I
add.
got that.
Okay, just making sure.
Sitting at the pinnacle of town with a 360 view. How much do you think that property is worth?
Couldn't tell you.
Would you want to know?
No, because the cost of relocating that 3 million gallon water tank and our gravity system is non-existent. So our system, our water system, relies solely on gravity fed. We have no other locations in mind that are as high as that point that will allow for us to operate our water system. Our entire water system operates out of that water tank. Every single individual that has water in this town operates from that water tank.
I got it, but you're pumping it up there. So what's the difference in pumping it to a house from a different location? And furthermore, have you put the diver in the tank to know what the structural integrity is and the useful life of the tank?
I don't think that that's necessarily relevant to this topic, but I would say yes. So the town council most recently did approve a contract with American Tank Company for not only inspections internally, externally, but also resurfacing of the tanks.
It's relevant because of the value of the property. So if you sold the property for $4.5 or $5 million, how much would it cost you to relocate the tank? And at the same time, since it's 50 years old, you're going to have to replace it sooner rather than later. So you made the comment that these folks here that live on Green Hill Circle ought to be more concerned about that water tank, 3 million gallons of water, than they would the tower falling. So at some point, you're just planning on rebuilding the tank there at whatever cost and continue with that potential liability? Or are you willing to look at maybe moving the tank, having 2 tanks, using pumps to send water versus gravity?
The tank is not at its useful life, so the tank is perfectly fine where it's at. The
For how
cost of
long?
relocating that tank, or the cost of building that tank today, would be a number that I couldn't give you, but it would be tens of millions of dollars for the cost of relocating and putting that tank in another place with the pumps that it required.
And how much would it cost if it lets go and it ruins several $1 million plus houses?
That's why the town has taken the proactive approach of hiring and contracting with American Tank Company to make sure that that tank is structurally sound.
Well, that was 2 years ago that y'all talked about that at the April 2022 budget workshop meeting. So it's now taken
Contract was signed and the contract was agreed upon and executed on July 1st
of this year.
of this year. That's why we have individuals out taking care of the clear well first. It was painted this week. It was inspected last week.
So the town's going to hang on to that property regardless.
That is the preference of the town at this point. I'll allow town council to speak to that if they would like to.
I'm sorry, could I ask a detailed question that's totally different?
Certainly.
Condition number 5, I get the intent, both Kevin and you described, filling in gaps. As this goes to town council, how binding is the specific wording? And the reason I ask is any gaps, like being out there, the driveway is a gap. And just to be practical about this, it seems like that condition might be worded a little bit better. I get the intent of what you're talking about, which is great, but
Yeah, it can be reworded to be terms of reasonable, what type of gap where it can be, where an opaque buffer is not shown, clearly would not be where a driveway exists.
yeah, just maybe take a look at the language.
Right. The point obviously was to try to be.
You get the intent,
Good
totally
service.
get the intent.
We can definitely reword that to be a little more detailed.
I had a couple of questions.
Yes, sir.
First, a comment. I've driven up Green Hill many, many times, and I never even noticed that tank. So I want to just say it's very well camouflaged until yesterday when I stopped and I looked for
It's
it.
good to know.
Question, recognizing that this is mission critical and doing nothing is not an option, and I take you at your word when you say that really is not another viable option. Could a galvanized steel pipe be painted to camouflage it? And also, let me give this another question before you answer. Has anybody done a site line study to see how visible an 80-foot pole would be from the street?
So the pole's galvanized, so whatever you can apply to galvanize, I'm sure that we could paint the structure, to a color that was different than the galvanized steel or the gray color within that. No recent studies have been.
How is the pole affixed? Is it going to be on a concrete pad or
Is not, it will be direct buried.
Direct buried, okay.
Direct buried. And again, that will be handled by Blue Ridge Electric.
Is there any concern of hitting any water as you dig down?
There isn't, so we've had Blue Ridge up at
Okay.
the site, take a look at it, so the direct buried was what they prefer, installation.
Mr. Fox, have you had any studies done? I'm going back in memory, and this came up before you left the town's employment before. The statement was made that the pole needed to be replaced, but it would be no higher. And then all of a sudden, we started talking about a higher pole when you came back. And I know that the attorney that represents our community has asked for information. And to this point, the town hasn't provided, through the Freedom of Information Act, any information. And it's one of those things where it's a public trust towards the town and government, and that concerns me.
Go ahead.
And so I would just like to say, if we had a study that we could look at that shows what the current problems are and then what the solutions were, and if this in fact would be a solution, I think it would be important to have a tangible study to look at.
First, I'll speak to the study. No, there has not been a study, so the Freedom of Information Act. Unfortunately, I didn't put that up there as being a mistruth. It is nothing but a mistruth. There has been dozens of emails and dozens of documents that have been sent. There has been testimony from each council member, each department head, sworn testimony, so to speak, in email writing of correspondence or lack of correspondence. I have shared with the attorney myself countless emails. Our attorney is also here, and he can speak to the number of emails that he has sent. We're into the dozens of emails, attachments within the dozens of information that we can ask. We have stated to the attorney that we can't give you something we don't have. We've given you everything we have, every correspondence, every bit of information. We've taken it upon ourselves to even ask our department heads, ask our town council to go on record in stating they've not had communications with cellular companies or tower companies. They've done so. We've sent that information. I'm not sure what else we could send. We don't have it to send. And I think that's the best way to put it. That's an unfortunate thing with regards to comments or rumors that are made by others. There's no rules. We have rules and we follow those rules and those procedures. Therefore, that's why we're here tonight. The reason we're here tonight is to be able to say that we're trying to follow our own rules. We're not trying to bend the rules. Could we do a text amendment? Could we go a different route? Potentially. Could we cut the tree canopy? Potentially. I mean, there's lots of avenues here. We're trying to be good stewards. And to that, this is not directed to you as much as it is to those that are out there that may have said that. Simply as miscommunication. It's rumors. It's unfortunate because it's not true. I'll be glad to provide any of that as asked.
Thank you.
Certainly.
I go in the conditional zoning route. You stated in here that the special use permit makes the town applicant, judge, and jury. In this particular case, for conditional rezoning, are you not still the applicant, judge, and jury, in that you are also the property owner as well as the petitioner? And as both, you have to agree to the specific conditions?
It does, but with a special use permit, it is quasi-judicial and it limits the public's involvement. It
Okay.
limits their ability to speak and their ability to participate.
So how do you get around all of these town codes here regarding telecommunication towers? You come up with 5, which none of them are listed here, with potential maybe of the vegetative height. But as far as, I don't know, proposed towers not be permitted in R15, existing towers owned by governmental agencies cannot be replaced with a tower, has to be replaced with a tower of equal height or shorter. I can go on and on in this.
Certainly.
You talk about the fall zone, I don't know the folks that live 107 feet from where that tower is, but, you know, never say never, but 17 feet is from here to that wall, or maybe further. If that tower were to fall, it's gonna land right in the middle of their house, if it were to fall in that direction.
Not with 80 feet, it wouldn't. There's
Excuse me?
107 The house to the nearest corner is 107 feet.
It's, well, you put it right in the middle of the house, so that's
That's
all
where you
I'm,
put
that's
it.
all I'm basing it on.
So we put the label, but to the corner of the house, nearest to the house is 107 feet,
So it's 107 feet to the property line?
to where we propose the tower or the pole to go.
To the corner of this house right here, that's 107 feet.
Closest point.
Yes, closest point to any structure.
And then the property line, is that now a town easement or a right-of-way if it were to fall into the right-of-way? I mean, that's another condition. I'm just asking that, I guess my point here is, when you go with the conditional rezoning or zoning, do these just disappear?
They don't disappear, but what you're referring to, and I'll allow planning director to speak towards this, what you're referring to is dealing with telecommunication towers. It is written and was written to deal with cellular companies, to deal with external communication towers. This is internal, this is not. So we are attempting to follow within the closest.
Talk a little louder, Shane, I can't think all this up. Thank you.
So the section is dealing with telecommunication towers, dealing with cellular towers, dealing with entities that we are not. However, if you read through, does not stipulate, does not talk about the town pole that is up there. Doesn't reference the pole for internal communications, and so therefore we are attempting to follow within the closest guidelines that we have to allow for a public process.
Okay, well, I understand that. It just says here, existing towers owned by governmental agencies and designed for non-commercial emergency communications may be replaced with a tower equal in height or shorter to the replaced tower. All other ordinance provisions, which I assume are these, are applicable. So how do, I mean, I understand what you're saying about cell phone towers, but this specifically says existing governmental agency towers. And is that not a governmental agency tower?
Therefore, and I'll ask our attorney if he would like to step in and speak to why we chose conditional rezoning. I think that would be helpful perhaps to have him speak, or Kevin, if he would allow to speak, of why we went the direction that we have.
Well, while he's at it, I'd like to know too, under the permit required section, it says here that in order to get a telecommunication tower, that you have to have a special use permit, and I don't see anything in here that waives that. So I guess that would be interesting to hear his take on it.
Certainly. Excuse me. Happy to be here with you this evening. Effectively, what legislative rezoning like this conditional zoning is a request to rewrite the town ordinance. So what the council would be doing, it's like designating any zoning district through the legislative process. We're going to call this a commercial zone property. We're going to call this a high-density residential property. So through the conditional zoning, what you're doing is, to the extent that this varies the underlying ordinance requirements, you're varying it. To the extent it does not, you're abiding by all the other ordinance provisions. Again, as Shane, I think, explained, there are a number of strong reasons to take a legislative process rather than a quasi-judicial process in this sort of matter of broad community interest. So I think hopefully that answers your question a little bit. To the extent this rezoning varies underlying ordinance provisions, it does so. The other ordinance provisions would remain intact as it relates to fall zone and all of those other requirements that exist within that section of the ordinance. It also has that where you have, every town code has its issues where there are conflicting provisions as they're adopted over time, and some things conflict with others. This allows for this broad community input and this broad process in terms of treating this like a zoning of this particular property. In this case, you're zoning a small area, so there has to be a standard of reasonableness that takes in, and this is for the council to consider, really not so much as y'all's recommendation. But you have to consider the reasonableness of this rezoning like you would another legislative rezoning. So to the extent it varies things, such as that special use permit requirement, it does. To the extent it does not, all the other ordinance provisions relating to a tower like this would remain in effect.
Okay, well, I'm a little hard of hearing sometimes. Are you saying varying or burying?
varying.
Thank you.
To the extent it changes it, that special use permit requirement, the council would be legislative saying, essentially, we're rewriting this zoning to allow for this continued use.
So, but you don't have those in any of the staff reports, you only have 5 requirements. You have nothing that says anything about fall zones.
Because those would still apply.
Okay, well, I don't see that in here. I wish it would say, nor does it say that in this ordinance, which seems to be a little heavy-handed, that it ought to say, number 6, all other town codes are applicable.
Being that this would be my first conditional zoning with the town, I'm not sure, but typically that is in place when this comes to the town council for their ultimate consideration.
Okay, well, I hope so.
As a matter of law, it would be in place regardless of whether it said that, but that would come to the council, typically from the staff recommendation of the council, that all, requirements that are not otherwise changed by this legislative process would remain intact.
Any other questions? And just to try to get us back on track, really the purpose of the conditional zoning by its title is we're here to develop conditions for this particular rezoning. And the town has given us 5 conditions for us to review, and we're certainly able to add to that if you so desire. And I think the town council would probably like us to hear from some of the property owners, and maybe they have a condition or 2 that they would like to suggest. And so it's not a public hearing, but we're glad to take comments.
I have a question. I don't know if it's a comment, but I lived on Green Hill for about 30 years.
If you can come to the podium so she can get your name and address.
My name is Bill Perrault. I live at 130 Blackberry Lane, which is about 100 yards from the water tower. I'm not certain about the timing, but I'd say about 20 years ago, there was a lightning strike on the house on the southwest corner adjacent to the water tower. It had a stone chimney and it had a tall antenna. And the fire marshal, it wasn't our fire chief, I think the term was fire marshal, that came and looked at it, was quite concerned because the lightning strike caused the chimney on that house to explode, and it arced to the water tower. And, we live where 3 million gallons would wash me in the house down the hill. So I'm just wondering if there's any study that's been done, or if anybody knows, I just take science, that if you put a 80-foot tall steel pole next to the water tower, does it increase the likelihood of lightning causing it to explode? Yeah. That's my other question. I think I have to make one other comment. Because I was here, there was another hearing, and it's very silent on this. But I think the reason that the neighbors seem concerned about what is presented versus what we've heard is that the previous occurrence of this, it was a private enterprise activity on the part of a number of members of the town staff. And what was presented was not at all what the actual circumstances were. So if there are those of you who are wondering, why would anybody want the police to not have the best communication possible? I think it's outrageous that we don't have good communications for our police and for our fire department. But when the fire chief was involved in this earlier misrepresentation, it leaves the neighbors very concerned about why this comes up again when the return to this. So you need to understand that we're not unreasonable people. Thank you.
Yeah.
My name is Nathan Miller. I'm an attorney in Boone. I live out 430 Old East Ridge Road. I do not live in the town of Blowing Rock. I'm here because I represent an LLC Its acronym is PROTECT. It's Protect Blowing Rock Neighborhoods LLC, and it is the members of the Green Hill community. First, Mr. Fox, I would take issue with their public records request and that they have been complied with or turned over. I get a lot of emails, and maybe I missed one. I've received one email from the town on June 24th from Mr. Fox that had the town council members attachment that they had been talking to cell tower companies. That's fine, but I used to be the chairman of the county commissioners here in Watauga County. You don't get to this point unless you're communicating with Blue Ridge Electric or Rutherford, wherever they're buying the pole. I mean, they got a picture of the pole. That didn't magically appear. There's an email chain, and we haven't received that email chain. Maybe it doesn't exist. Maybe it was provided. I missed an email. Like I said, I get a lot of emails, but the lack of transparency there has been an issue, and that just sows distrust. We have prepared a letter for your consideration. I'm not going to sit through and read the letter, but I will give it to you for your consideration in regards to this issue. First, the way we're going about this in rezoning this to basically its own special zone is not the great and proper way to do it, because there is a method set up in your ordinance to allow for a rezoning that allows for a quasi-judicial procedure. The reason quasi-judicial procedure is preferred is because you get to set up who the interveners are. You get to set up and allow a structured area or a structured format to allow the parties to present evidence, and ultimately, if it's found to be reviewed by a court of law later on. The method that we have right here that they're attempting to do circumvents that. It can still get to a court of law, and it will if necessary, but it makes it messier and makes it harder, and it also makes it so there's not a record. So not only are we going to retry it either here or in front of the town council and then in Superior Court, or but at the Board of Adjustment, you can hear it, and then it goes to Superior Court with the record. It allows all the parties to get in and all the evidence, and it allows a smoother process that's already been invented. This is circumvents it. There were some various aspects that were talked about in regards to the actual ordinance that is being proposed. And the ordinance that's being proposed, if you look at section 9, all ordinances or portions thereof in conflict hereof are hereby repealed to the extent of such conflict. The telecommunication ordinance is in conflict with this in its entirety. And so by section 9, the town is saying, well, we can do what we want, and here we can do it, and it'll be okay. We're exempting ourselves. Well, the town put that telecommunication ordinance in there for a reason, and it's important. One, and I have dealt with Board of Adjustment in Banner Elk and dealt with a cell tower. When a private company wants to come before a town and present a tower, you got to get an appraiser to talk about how it deals with private companies or private property around it. You have to have an engineer come talk about the fall zone of that tower to make sure that it, some towers, they design them so they collapse in on themselves. I don't know how this tower collapses. There's no evidence. There's really, the application in itself is incomplete. And that's a problem. If we had a complete application, it would be a lot more preferable. I've certainly heard stories about Chief Green growing up here. I know that story well. It's a very old story, and the technology is different, and I hate that. I was there when we did the memorial up there at the Sheriff's Department and added his name. However, and of course, if you notice in the letter, my clients want good communication with the fire, with the paramedics, and with police, because that benefits everybody. But there's been no study. There has been the leaves are on the tree, and so we notice things. If you look back at various meetings, this hadn't come up in meetings. Either there's a meeting, I can't think of the date, I believe it was at the beginning of the year, with the Emergency Management Services. They didn't talk about this. So if it's been a problem, there's not any emails about it, There's not any meetings about it. It's just, I guess, a whisper campaign that there's a problem. Protect has engaged Cityscape, which is a company which could do a study, about the various lines of sight or about the most effective area, and could do a citywide study to determine the best placement for towers. I'm no expert. I can't tell you the best placement of towers. It may be the tallest place. It may not be. It may be various relays throughout the town. I don't know, but you can certainly spend the money to do a study to figure that out. The county's doing that. The county engaged a study in March to do just that. Now, granted, it's a different type of system. It's the Viper system. You've got a bigger problem, in my opinion. One, I like Tucker, your town attorney, and I respect him very much, but I wouldn't be an attorney if I didn't disagree with another attorney. And under 160D, I vehemently disagree with him that this tower could not be co-located by AT&T and Verizon. I'm not sitting here to say that there is a campaign by Verizon or AT&T or T-Mobile or anybody else that they're colluding with the town right now to the town build a tower and them to locate on it. That is not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is the town is opening the door to allow that to happen. That state law exists. This is a city-owned tower, and they can do it when you're bringing that height up. Right now, the height of it, it's not enticing for one of those companies. You increase that height, and it is. But the biggest problem, in my estimation, and I do have co-counsel, Mr. Ware out of Charlotte. He is not here tonight, but he is watching via Zoom. But what I think the biggest problem is the neighborhood restrictions. All right, when this was originally built, and I've got copies for you here, this was subdivided in August of 1955, okay? So it's an old subdivision. And there's a plat book 2, page 83, and this is all in the Register of Deeds for anybody to find. I'm sorry, my copier thumped out on me. I'm sorry, I didn't make enough copies. I was pulling. Yes, sir. So you will see a water tower on there, or a water tank on there in the middle. It's very small, but it's a circular. Sorry about that. Yeah, right there in the middle. That was there when the subdivision was created. But that lot now, I don't have the ability to put the tax map up. That lot now is the access road to the tower as it is now. The town bought and paid for lots 1, 2, 3, 4, 14, and 15. Now, in the town's deed, and I have copies if you want, I can hand them out if you want, but there are no restrictive covenants in the town's deed when they bought it from Catherine and S. Page Graham. However, those lots were encumbered by the developer, were encumbered. Lot 1 has a restriction. The property shall be used for residential purposes only, and no other buildings except garages or other buildings for domestic purposes shall be constructed. Lot 14, 2, 3, 4, 14, and 15 have the exact same restriction. The neighboring properties, a number of them, all have the same. There's the same development scheme. Now, why is that important? The tower, you probably hear of non-conforming or grandfathered uses. That's not exactly the term we talk in with restrictive covenants. Right now, the water tower is a violation, but the statute of limitations on a violation is 6 years. It's been up there for 50. The water tower ain't going nowhere. Statute of limitations is run. The towers that they have right now, statute of limitations is run. If it's allowed to be permitted by the town to the construction of this tower, it would violate the restricted covenants. It's a new structure. It's not a residential structure. And it is inviting a lawsuit which the town will have to pay, and ultimately, based on the deeds and the restrictive covenants on this property and in the neighborhood, the town will ultimately lose. Now, if the town wants to spend money on that, that's certainly the town's prerogative. Well, I understand it, it's the tax dollars.
We're paying it.
But that, I don't know that that's ever stopped a municipality or county before. Nope. So we would ask that you deny this. I'm sure I've missed some. Our letter encompasses a lot more, but it is, if we talk about being good neighbors, that's following the restrictive covenants. This, and that would require following them and not adding anything else. And so we would ask, again, that you deny this special use permit. Thanks.
Okay, were you taking any questions?
Oh, yeah, I'll take whatever questions you want. Sorry about that.
If they proceed or we proceed, the town council proceeds, they approve it, what's the likelihood that you'll file a lawsuit?
Oh, I'd say it's high.
Okay.
I'd say as soon as the town council approves it, I will be seeking an injunction before the Superior Court, probably on the 29th.
And loser pays?
It depends.
Okay.
It depends. Loser could pay. Everybody in North Carolina, it's generally a pay your own way state, but if it's egregious enough or there's some other statute that allows it, then the loser would pay. And there is a statute regarding municipalities. But I'm not going to sit here and tell you it's absolute.
So we're looking at six-figure legal fees again?
I would imagine it'd be 6 or 7, depending on,
No, I'm talking about not 6 or 7,000, I'm talking about 6 or 7 figures.
No, I understand.
Not 7 figures, but maybe 6.
I honestly couldn't tell. I don't know what Mr. Deal charges. I don't know if he'd be doing it, and it would be expensive.
I've got a question for you. Mr. Miller, you said you represent this limited liability company. How many members do you actually have? Are these residents, the members of your LLC? Are they residents along Green Hill, and how many are there? 2?
Resident
20?
property owners. I don't know the full amount of how many members. How many members do we have now, George?
Gosh, I don't know. I'm sorry.
I think 20.
Okay. 20-ish. I don't know that number. And if you wish, I can pass out the town's deed and the covenant's deed, if you wish to have that for your consideration.
I think that's an issue that the town's attorney needs to deal with, and town council. I don't think that's part of our purview.
Well, I understand. If you want a copy, I'll give you a copy. If you don't, I won't. It doesn't matter to me. The tree is already killed. Okay.
Those things are getting in the way.
Thank you.
Mine for the town attorney.
Okay, is anyone else that would like to add some comment? And I would like to remind everybody, we're here to develop conditions to add to this permit. So if you have ideas of things that could make this tower more amenable to the neighborhood, we'd love to hear that. We're not here to debate the need of it.
No, nor are we. We recognize the need for good communication, as stated earlier. My name's Barry Buxton. I'm a native of Bowling Rock. I was born here. I knew Chief Green, and it was a tragic moment. It was a dark chapter in the history of our town. I remember it well. But at any rate, I'm not here to talk about the legal aspects of this. I'm here to talk to you about the human aspects of this. I'm here to talk to you as a resident of Bowling Rock who lives in the area and we are concerned, collectively, we're concerned about what the town is proposing. We know that the current council may take a position with regard to what might happen there in the future, but we certainly don't know what future councils might do, and we feel vulnerable. And you might feel the same way if you live there, if you lived in the area. We already have a water tank, and you know that that's a potential hazard to all of us who live there. It's important to have the water tank. We're not denying that. But I guess what we're wondering is, could the town not take a moment to step back because of the anxiety of the residents? Take a moment to step back and look at the possible alternatives. We know that there are two high points in town, Green Hill and Mayview. And we know that the town already owns the property at the water tank. We understand that. But there is the horse show grounds, and there are possibilities for alternative means of communicating. We want the very best communication for our personnel. We're not denying that at all. But we are asking you to please take a moment, put yourselves in our shoes, and think about considering some alternatives, and perhaps even doing a study that would help us understand the best way to move communication forward for our community. Thank you.
Sure.
May I make a statement?
Sure.
I've been impressed with the presentation today. A lot of questions I want to ask, but I do have one that I'm very serious about. And I thought I understood it to say that all alternatives had been looked at. Is that correct?
That question ought to be directed to the town manager, actually.
Okay. Well, I'll just.
I mean, you're welcome to ask him, I would think. He would be open to answering.
Did I understand that correctly? Did you feel like you've?
I would ask that if you're looking at alternatives, what alternatives are you looking at, whether that's be a study or whether that be some mechanism?
No, I think y'all spent enough time on all of that, and the community's put up with it long enough, quite honestly. Has anyone thought about satellite communications? You don't have to answer. I'm just trying to throw out some solutions. As an investor, the hearsay, I'll use the word hearsay, is that towers will be becoming obsolete in the next 3 to 5 years because of the advancement, the popularity of satellite communications. Have you not looked at it, would you look at it? It'd make everybody happy. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Just one brief comment. My name is Jason McDaniel. I live at 574 Green Hill Circle. I'm straight across the street from the tank down the driveway. And I'd like to have some better fall zone studies. They tell me right now the tower will reach my property line but won't reach my house. But I have noticed in the past when heavy things fall downhill, they tend to bounce and slide. And I'm pretty sure this thing will slide into my house. And I'd like to see a study that would tell me that's not going to happen.
Okay. Any comments from board members you'd like to make concerning conditions or other?
Do we have the opportunity or option to nix it or not? Or are we just here to add conditions to what we have received? That may be a question for Kevin, I don't know.
You're providing a recommendation to town council concerning the permit.
So we are strictly restricted to adding conditions to this, is that? Versus just tabling it or?
No, the conditions that are, those 5 conditions are proposed by the town. any applicant that provides conditions for their conditional rezoning, they are submitting those voluntarily. If the town, or if you make a recommendation for additional conditions and it goes on to council, the applicant has to agree with those conditions, whatever those might be, for that to move forward in approval. It's unique in the way that conditional zoning works. The applicant proposes conditions, and then if they agree to the conditions that are asked of either planning board or council, then the project moves forward if it's approved.
And that puts you back as applicant, judge, and jury on a conditional zoning, basically. I mean,
I'm just answering how the conditional.
Yeah, I understand that,
process
but I mean, I'm just saying that's basically what you are. You're the applicant, you decide what the conditions are, and then if anything's added to it, you decide whether you agree with it. Is that essentially what you're saying? So we can add something, but you may not agree with it.
Well, that's true, but the council still has the option not to approve the rezoning.
Right. No, we're just a
Understand that.
we're an advisory board. That's
I
all we
understand,
are.
yes,
Yeah.
that's true, but
Yeah.
what I'm saying is if, maybe you propose some good conditions and the applicant does not agree with that, well, ultimately, the council has to approve the request, and they may not. They may say, well, we think you ought to agree with these conditions, and they may not approve it.
Okay.
It's legislative, they're not
Right.
obligated to approve it.
Yeah. But again, you're the applicant. The town of Blowing
Town
Rock
is
is.
the applicant, yes.
Yes, I'm George Wilcox. I live at 460 Green Hill Circle, and I've been knocking around this place for about 40 years. And the first 20 years, I didn't know where Town Hall was. So, but in any event, we finally got the wake-up call when they started talking about putting a cell tower on right across the street from me. So that alarmed me, and it still alarms me. It came back 2014, the town government made a commitment not to put a tower, a big communications tower on Green Hill. They also made a commitment to do studies, have professional studies done to find alternate locations for towers. Okay, that apparently was never done. 2016, they came back, wanted to put a Viper tower up there. That was shot down, unfortunately. That was going to be a 200 feet tall tower. And the state even said they don't do that because they don't put them in neighborhoods. If you look at the town code and you look at the state law, everything is directed to try to keep these things out of neighborhoods. They're ugly. I don't think there's a soul in this room. Pete Guarini might be one. You want to come out, Pete, out your front door and see a big communications tower out there? I guess you're ready for it, aren't you, brother? Well, anyway, I think most people want it. Most appraisers and real estate people tell me it's going to knock the property value down 10% if you put that thing up there. That got my attention, I can tell you. So the question becomes, if we can do the job without damaging the neighborhood, folks, why don't we do it? And really, what has happened, we have partnered with the town in trying to help out on various things in the past. We're willing to partner with the town on a first-class communication study. This would be not only on emergency services, but also on cell phones. You know, they're important to everybody. So we're willing to go in with the town on that and help out. We think the town needs to have a professional organization to do a study. We love the police, the fire department. Shane's done a great job for us. We're not here to criticize any of these folks. They're out there working hard for us, and we appreciate what you do. But that's what we have to say. Let's have a professional look at this and come up with the best solution. We've got the best town in North Carolina. So let's have the best communication system in North Carolina. We can do it. Thank you.
Okay, back to board discussion. Is any comments or questions that you'd like addressed?
I propose we table it until either that study's done that he's talking about, or there's further information provided to the council for the group, or any number of reasons other than those two. But I think there needs to be a lot more consideration here versus making a decision tonight.
Yeah, I'll mirror those comments. I just think that there's so many people affected, there's so many properties affected, there's so much value affected, that I think as a good citizen, the town owns the citizens to study. Whatever the results of the study are, I think that's the next logical step. Not to ramrod this through this way.
What happens in the meantime without these communications?
Continue on as best we can. We continue on with the risk that we continue on with.
Can there not be a repeater or a small tower even put on top of the police station that would help with that, or not?
There already is.
That's
the point. Yeah, that's the receiving and the recipient of the police state dispatch.
And you can't put another repeater anywhere else in town that wouldn't be obvious as an 80-foot tower? I mean, there can't be repeaters around town that increase the signal.
You can place repeaters throughout various locations. However, you have to have some central point, a nucleus, so to speak, somewhere. That's what this is. It's the highest point in town, therefore it's our nucleus of our equipment. The town has a great deal of topography challenges with over 1,000 feet in elevation within the town limits. Therefore, the higher we can go at the highest point, the ability for us to have the better coverage. That's why that site was chosen originally, and it's why we continue to choose that site.
But there's no way to strengthen that signal coming off of Green Hill, using the existing tower and adding repeaters around town to pick that up and rebroadcast it, which is what a radio station does, but I mean, I'm just asking.
Boosters, that type of thing, potentially. I couldn't give you the exact science behind that today, how many that would be or where that would be. We unfortunately are a residential town, and we have neighborhoods everywhere. What that would look like, whether that would be feasible or possible, yet to be determined. Understanding from a residential standpoint that no one wants this type of thing in their neighborhood. That's why this site, I'm sure, was picked all those years ago.
Why hasn't a study been done?
So I will continue by saying we are looking obviously at the least impactful as we can. Current site is where it's housed. It's been housed there. That's why it continues to be the choice. Whether that's in other locations or not, our town is, again, not commercial. Our commercial is downtown, not at the highest point in town. 90+% of our town is residential. Very few unsold lots, very few undeveloped properties within town. Town owns, several parcels within the downtown area that we utilize right now for, various reasons: town hall, police station, park and rec, fields, that type of thing. Again, this is the highest point in town. That's why, therefore, we've continued to use this site for that purpose.
How is the height of 80 feet determined?
It is a stock pole. It is a typical height. We are looking to get above the trees and give ourselves a number of years further down the road as technology evolves or decisions are made by the town at that point, and what decisions they can make moving forward, yet to be determined. But puts us 20 or so feet above the current tree line that's there, and allows for those trees to continue to grow.
Has any consideration been to manage the canopy and put a tower that is equivalent to, right now it's 57 feet?
Correct.
Put a 60-foot tower with the new technology and manage the canopy around the tower.
So managing the canopy right now is not allowed by our code, as in tree topping or cutting the trees. That's not allowed. That's not something that's currently within the code, and I'll let Kevin speak to that. That's
Blue Ridge does it all the time.
Not within the town property, so that town property specific. So that, Kevin, do you want to speak towards that?
Just a section of the ordinance that pertains to tree topping, and town being a local government is not, it's not something that our ordinance allows. You just go out and start topping trees. Remove the tree, sure. We can remove the tree, but not top it.
The town's a part of Tree City USA. It's Harbor City, so we have designations within our trees. It started with Memorial Park years ago, if you were here during that time, and having to take those trees out. We've put emphasis in place and ordinances in place to help protect the trees that we have. Topping trees on town-owned property is not something that's allowed. Removing the trees in DB would be. So complete removal is something that's out there that we would like to not have to choose.
Why can't you just conditionally rezone it, saying that you're gonna top the trees on town-owned property, that one parcel? I mean, you're gonna build a tower using conditional rezoning. Why not just
We chose to go this option.
versus managing the canopy?
We chose to go this option.
Okay.
Why has the study not been done?
That's an issue for town council. We're not here to debate the need for it. We're here to develop conditions.
You're the planning board. You're planning the tower. It seems a study would be done, would need to be done.
That's a question for town council. Any other questions from the board? Oh, I've got Shane up here.
Well, I got a motion on the floor, so I'd like it either voted up or down.
One issue you need to be aware of with tabling, that doesn't table the hearing. The hearing continues on, so.
Well, I understand that, but I'm just saying as far as.
If we don't give a recommendation within 30 days, they move on.
Well, it seems like I recall there was a property out here on 321 that just sort of disappeared off our radar here, and that was more than 30 days, but, so you're saying if we table it, we only have 30 days to
Provide a recommendation. Okay. That's the way I read it. Is that correct?
Dig in.
I believe that's state law.
So clarification, so if we recommended a study be done, because the study wouldn't reach conclusion in 30 days, we're.
But town council can always choose to table their hearing. If that's part of your recommendation, if you're encouraging town council to table.
Yeah, maybe I didn't.
Hey there. If you'd like some input on that a little bit, you are correct in terms of the town council being able to proceed with an action if you don't make a recommendation. And Mr. Bergström, not to put words in your mouth or anything, but you may consider making a recommendation such as the town not vote to approve this and pursue a study. And that would be up for debate amongst your board members, and y'all can debate that as a motion. Again, I don't want to tell you what you want to say, but I think that may be an option that aligns with your thinking there.
Okay.
So just let you know that.
What he said is what I.
That would become one of the conditions that the town conduct a study.
Right. Thank you.
So the condition would relate to approval, but you could say, do not approve this.
Yeah, so just so I understand, is you said what he said, but what you're saying, can you say it in your own words, what your motion is? Or something close to your own words?
Not as well as that, but, but essentially, yeah, I would like to see it tabled, potential, or study done, whatever we have to do, and have town council not move forward on it. Is that what he said? Is that what you were saying, in essence?
I heard him say something different, which is why I'm asking the question.
Okay.
Could you recommend that the town council does a study?
I'm sorry, was that directed towards me? I believe, again, I don't want to put words in your mouth one way or another, but what I was hearing from you was that your recommendation, again, providing advice to the town council, would be to not approve this zoning until a study had been done. And other members may feel differently, so that's something that y'all as a board would debate, but you are an advisory board. You are here to provide a recommendation to council, whatever the form of that recommendation may be, which council may take up, and after a certain period of time, they again, you're advisory, so they're not obligated to follow that. But again, that's your consideration here tonight. So again, I think if that is your phrasing, I feel like it would run along those lines, perhaps. The town council not approve, subject to engaging in some form of study, and I would leave y'all to discuss what that really means from your perspective.
Let me state it another way. Could we, as an option, recommend approval subject to the council doing a study to see if there was not a better alternative?
Yes, I think this is a debate for
Just
y'all,
to
and
move it
it
along.
being a policy matter, I don't want to tell you what to do one way or another, just to provide direction that you are advisory, and your obligation here is to provide a recommendation to council, whether that's approval with additional conditions, approval subject to a study, denial until a study's been performed. However, y'all debate and come up with that determination, but it's your recommendation to make. So rather than tabling, I would ask that you make a recommendation in some form.
You want to, would you like to
Want me to
restate
try
your
again?
motion?
Okay, let's see if I can try again here. I recommend that we do not move forward with this until there has been a study done that Mr. Wilcox was talking about, and we find out if there are potential alternatives that can be viewed, and we recommend the town council not move forward as well at this point without a recommendation from us, if that's possible. So that, I mean, I guess what I'm worried about is if they decide, well, the heck with it, we're gonna do it anyway, then we're looking at a lawsuit. We're not, well, we all are, because we're gonna be paying for it. But, that's what I'm trying to prevent, I guess, is having a lawsuit over all of this. When if we spend the money that a lawsuit would cost to do additional studies to determine what, if any, alternatives are available, what's the viability of putting repeaters around town? I mean, I can go on, but I mean, my point is I just think we need further considerations and studies to determine what we can do differently than what this is, which seems to be very cut and dried and seems to be almost being force-fed to the residents of Green Hill Circle.
As the applicant, let me ask a question. So if we were to take these considerations, move forward with council were to request of us to do a study comes back different than the 80-foot pole, multiple poles, 150-foot pole, do we start the process over again? Do we come back before planning board and request the conditional rezoning at that point? We would, correct? Given the fact that as applicants, we're now asking for approval, a recommendation to ultimately go to town council for potential approval to erect an 80-foot pole. That's the specific language in this. Anything different than that would require us to go back through that process, correct? And stipulate the details of that. So if a study were perhaps to say that communications were in dire needs and we need 150 foot, we need 6 poles, that type of thing, then we would need to go back through this process, correct?
As the code currently, as the code currently reads, that would, yes, our case, but things can change over time, so it's hard to answer that in absolute fashion at this point in time.
Thank you. So we have a motion on the floor to add a 6th condition. Is there a second?
Second.
Is everybody clear about what that additional condition is? I'll try to summarize. Subject to a study that can be conducted to explore alternatives.
All five still remain, first 5?
I have nothing against studies, but I'd like, again, to offer an alternative motion, and that would be to approve, there's a recommendation here from staff for an 80-foot pole. I'd like to recommend that, suggest that we recommend approval, subject to the town conducting a study to see if there isn't a more viable option, more realistic, or another viable option that's better. So that it moves it along. Otherwise, we're going to go back to square one. This will never get done. And I hear staff saying that this is mission critical, that we do something. And I would say also, on the other hand, we're talking about the town facing potential liability if the town council takes action.
Puts it in their hands.
But the other side of that is, if we take no action and there's a crisis and the communication fails, could the town not also be liable? So I'd like to get this thing moving, so I'm offering an alternative motion that we recommend approval, subject to the town doing another study to see if there's a more viable option.
So
Just keeps it
are
moving
you
along.
willing to withdraw yours, or you want yours voted on?
Well, I just have a question. Does that confine us to the 30 days, or did you find that in there? I mean, if we make a recommendation that says we're willing to move this forward with the condition that an additional study will be done, what is the time limit on that? Is that open-ended? Is that?
No, your recommendation goes straight to council.
I'm
And then
talking-
they can consider your recommendation.
You know, there's no
They don't have to
timing,
do
they
the
just,
study.
but they decide to
just a
approve the
recommendation.
study, and then however long the study takes.
Okay, well, that's what I want to make sure, because you mentioned a 30-day window that you had, or just.
That's if you table it. And I'm
We're
suggesting we not
approved.
table it, but that we approve it just to keep it moving. Approve it subject to the town, with a recommendation that the town provided, secure and all. Well, let me finish my motion again before you say no. That we recommend approval to the town, subject to the town, as an additional condition, doing a study to see if there's a more viable option.
Viable to the town, viable to the neighborhood. Bill.
We got a
That's
motion.
for the town that's for the town council to decide.
Let us discuss.
Input from the town.
No, I'm not withdrawing.
We need to vote on the motion on the floor at the current time. Is everybody ready to vote on the motion, the current motion, and then we'll talk about the alternatives? If
Can you
that-
repeat the current motion one more time?
Adding a sixth condition to the list of conditions that that it be denied? Is that what you're saying? Or that it's just subject to a study?
I don't think with the information we have, we can make an intelligent decision tonight. So how you want to phrase that, and I'm not a lawyer, I'll give the guy $1 and retain him, and he can come up here and speak for me if he wants to. But my point is that we don't have enough information in front of us, and all of this I got here doesn't tell me what we need to do tonight, tomorrow night, 2 months from now, or anything else, until we know what else can be done in town, around town, versus having that pole sitting up there on Green Hill.
Well, you're either voting for it or you're voting against it.
That's what I'm saying.
And so if you're voting against it, you don't have conditions. So you got to be voting for it and adding a sixth condition that recommends a study.
I think he's trying to vote against it. He's not trying
Your
to.
your motion is to deny.
He's not you haven't expressed this in this way, but that's why we keep asking you what you're trying to make a motion about.
Okay, well, I'm trying to articulate it, not, obviously not doing a good job, so if anybody can.
Greg, I think your motion is to deny.
That is
Recommend
deny.
deny.
Because of the lack of a study.
Because of the lack of study.
But then we're back to the 30-day window.
No, that's not
No,
tabling.
that's only tabling.
Okay, all right.
So the motion on the floor is to deny because of a lack of a study of alternatives.
Okay, I'll go with that.
And I'll second that.
Second. Show of hands.
We doing,
In favor of denying the petition? 3 in favor. You got those? Motion fails. Now, Steve, make an alternative.
Motion to approve with an additional condition that the town secure a study to see if there's a more viable option.
Is there a second to that motion?
That's it.
You got that done? All in favor of the current motion?
Aye.
Any opposed? 3 opposed. Motion carries. Thank you.
These are long.
Any other business, Jim?
Is there, are we done with adding conditions to this? We can't add any more conditions?
We voted on the condition.
That condition, but that was the condition to add, the condition that it had to be done for a study.
That was the list of conditions, yeah.
All right.